to what Senator Kinywa seeks to intervene on.
Mr. Speaker, the people of Kitui are listening, keenly listening. And when the Senator of Nairobi said he thought mung beans is a fancy crop, so does he insinuate, Mr. Speaker, that dengu is just another crop and the people of Kitui are listening, Mr. Speaker? What did he mean by fancy, Mr. Speaker?
Senator Sifuna.
Mr. Speaker, you must rule my colleagues out of order. This is what we call frivolous points of order. Because I think it is a problem with language.
Proceed.
Yes, allow me, please. Mr. Speaker, don't allow any further interventions. Mr. Speaker, I have even forgotten where I was because of all this. And this is the intention of these people. This is why they do it. Mr. Speaker, I was saying that because of the problems other farmers have experienced, we should not assume that the problems that bedeviled maize farmers, for instance, cannot bedevil the ones growing mung beans. Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy that in this particular bill, the Senator has made it clear that the intention of the bill is actually to protect these farmers. Mr. Speaker, I had a conversation with him regarding some of the provisions, and I wanted to speak to only three provisions of this bill. Mr. Speaker, the first one is Section 6, which provides that the national and county governments shall, where they implement feeding programs within schools or other institutions or areas falling within respective mandate, implement a homegrown feeding program aimed at maximizing the benefits for growers by linking schools and other relevant institutions to local production. Mr. Speaker, here in Nairobi, I saw my governor the other day launching what is perhaps the largest school feeding program in the country. He estimates to spend about 800 million shillings per year just to feed the students in the public schools in Nairobi. And because we do not have those farms here to grow some of these crops, I am happy that this bill is providing a mechanism where we can link that program of the county government of Nairobi with the growers in Kitui. So, Mr. Speaker, what we need to do is to make sure that even in these school feeding programs, we see that linkage between the county governments or national governments implementing similar programs and the farmers themselves so that we can maximize on value. Of course, there are criticisms for our school feeding program here because, Mr. Speaker, as you know, in Nairobi we have about 205 public schools across the 85 wards. But, Mr. Speaker, a majority of the students, many of the students, are in what we call non-formal schools, and that they are the bulk of the students here, so that implementing that school feeding program in public schools alone is not auguring well for many of the parents in Nairobi. And we have had this conversation with my governor. Because, Mr. Speaker, you will know that out of the 85 wards in Nairobi, there are 10 wards where there are no public schools. 10 whole wards, you go to places like Pipeline, with that high density, places like Kware, there are no public schools. So we have asked him that he must extend this school feeding program to even the non-formal schools. And I'm sure he will listen because most of the times he does. Mr. Speaker, what we want people to know about this particular bill as well is that under clause I think it is clause 8.2, I did not understand why Senator Wambua wanted that all the growers of Ndengu be registered with the county governments. But he explained to me that if you are going to offer extension services to these farmers, the county government needs to know where these people are and what variety of the bean they are growing. Because, Mr. Speaker, one of the arguments that has been made in this country is that we are over-regulated. There are too many regulations, there are too many licenses, there are too many registrations. And for me, when I was growing these crops back at home, I wouldn't imagine that I needed registration. I thought initially that it was going to add another layer of bureaucracy for these farmers, but Senator Enoch Wambua has very ably explained that if, in fact, we're going to have those farmers benefiting from the agricultural extension services that are mandated under this bill, you need to know who these people are and where they are and what they are growing. Also, Mr. Speaker, let me speak to clause number 9, where it requires that any person who markets, processes, or carries out large-scale trading in the mung bean or its products must obtain a license from the relevant county government. I think this is the crux of this bill. Because, Mr. Speaker, the problem has always been in any cash crop in this country, the exploitation by middlemen. the exploitation by middlemen that ensure that the farmers do not reap from what they have sown. Mr. Speaker, I only advised my senior that he may need, under the definition section of the Act, to define what large-scale trading is, so that we don't victimize people who might not necessarily be large-scale traders. Mr. Speaker, a lot was made here about the impact of the just passed finance bill. And I was very happy when the Speaker made that ruling that, in fact, we can discuss that matter even in this particular discussion, because that has opened an avenue for me to also say a few things. I honestly believe that an increase in VAT, Mr. Speaker, because the argument was made here by Senator Cherargei, that we are going to have more money for us to be able to give the county governments. We in the Azimio coalition, the minority party, argue that, in fact, the economic impact of the passage of the finance bill is going to be counterproductive, because many of these farmers rely on this same agricultural equipment that uses diesel. You are aware of the level of mechanization or the level of fuel needs, especially in mechanized agriculture. And Mr. Speaker, if you levy further taxes on fuel, we are going to see a lot of problems facing our farmers. He also made the argument that somehow those increased taxes are going to be able to support this particular program. Mr. Speaker, the way county governments receive resources is through that Division of Revenue Act that we deal with here in the Senate. And it is unfortunate that this was coming from Senator Cherargei, because I know his position on the Division of Revenue. If he can guarantee us that now that the taxes have been increased on just about everything, that next year when we come here to discuss the Division of Revenue, he will increase resources to the counties, I will be more than happy. Mr. Speaker, I told you, Nairobi is going to spend 800 million shillings, 800 million shillings per year to feed the children in public schools. Do you know, Mr. Speaker, that 800 million shillings is the entire extra allocation that Nairobi received under the Division of Revenue this year? So you can imagine a single project like that in the county of Nairobi gobbles up every single penny that we added to the equitable share of the county of Nairobi. The county governor told us on Madaraka Day that he's going to put 500 million shillings in renovating City Stadium. Mr. Speaker, this is why we argue here every day with my colleagues, that counties need resources, counties need money. So if indeed the national government is receiving an additional 300 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker, why is it not possible for us to make sure that also the county governments receive money, additional resources commensurate to the responsibilities that we are adding upon them? I have stood here to debate bills upon bills that are adding layer upon layer of extra responsibility on the county governments. But there is never a commensurate measure to ensure that the counties actually have those resources to undertake the programs that we are asking them to undertake. So, Mr. Speaker, Senator Cherargei, I believe, was misleading the House, misleading the nation, by coming here to pontificate about how county governments are going to get extra allocation. Yet when the vote was here on this particular floor, he rejected those extra resources to go to county governments, including his own county government of Nandi. Maybe the people of Nandi don't need these extra resources. I think, Mr. Speaker, you had agreed to protect me from these incessant points of order. And you must rule him out of order and throw him out. Mr. Speaker, when he was speaking, I was very quiet. So let me conclude. I want to conclude by saying that I support fully this particular bill, and I want to congratulate my brother, Senator Kitui, for bringing this bill. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Cherargei. Senator Sifuna, sorry, Majority Leader.
That's very simple work you're giving me. Let me deal with the Mang bills first. Mr. Speaker, I will respond later to the misleading